Welcome to the Fusion Cell Podcast, The Military Effect. I'm your host, Jack Heath. Fusion Cell, the founding mission was and still is to this day, the mission bridging the gap between military talent and the civilian workplace. Dina Anderson from the recruitment team at Fusion Cell, our guest this week, and you have a great story as our featured cellmate from Fusion Cell. Dina, thanks so much for being with us.
Thanks for having me, Jack. I'm excited to be here.
Well, let's go back a little bit before we go forward, Dina. You work on a daily basis helping veterans transition from their service, great service to our country and to all of us, and then bridge the gap to civilian side of things in the workplace. Tell us about your path, Dina, to Fusion Cell.
Yeah, so I actually am an Air Force veteran. So I joined the military a while back. I served 20 years in the Air Force. And how I got to Fusion Cell was when I was in the military, I was in transportation first, and then I transitioned into recruiting service. And I absolutely fell in love with recruiting. I actually was brought to Fusion Cell through the power of networking. Our cellmate, Jeremy Montgomery, he and I went to recruiting school back in 2005. And so we built a really good relationship. We always kept in touch, talked about life, talked about our careers. And he was brought on to Fusion Cell, and he knew, just who I was as a person and that I loved recruiting so much. When they were looking for a recruiter, he reached out to me. And it had been some time since we had talked, but, we picked up like old friends do, and we had a conversation, and he was telling me all the great things about Fusion Cell and the mission, and I just knew it was a team that I wanted to be a part of. So he introduced me to the leadership at Fusion Cell. We had a couple conversations. I was able to meet Matt and Rad, and the rest is history. It's been an awesome 2.5 years here at Fusion Cell, and it's just a blessing to be able to help transitioning service members find their next career because I was that person. So I understand the good, the bad, the ugly of what the transition looks like, and being able to have that personal testimony and show them that, yes, we understand you and we know what you're going through.
Dina Anderson, you're one of the all-star cellmates on the recruiting side for Fusion Cell. Dina, with your Air Force background, the differentiator I see, correct me if I'm wrong or elaborate on this, please, with Fusion Cell versus other entities out there that talk about or promote that they can help veterans connect with the civilian work side or companies connect with veterans and military talent, is people like you. Fusion Cell seems to be full of genuine veterans who know the military ranks they left, know the branches, have access to those talent pools, but more importantly, expert knowledge because you are a veteran of the Air Force and you're also now in the civilian workplace, work side, helping veterans. Is that one of the differentiators, is the actual team members of Fusion Cell have that credibility within the military branches?
Yeah, absolutely, Jack. 90% of Fusion Cell is made up of veterans, whether it be Air Force, Army, different branches. We've all served. We have the opportunity to reach out to our own personal networks in whatever branch we served in or whatever career field that may be. And, again, that personal testimony, we've walked in the shoes of the veterans that we're helping. So we understand what that transition looks like. So when we connect with a client and we know what the requirements of the job are, we know what career field, AFSC, MOS, is going to align really well with what the client is looking for. So we can tap back into our networks and find people that are getting ready to transition out or find leaders in those particular career fields that can connect us to those veterans that we're able to help and, again, introduce to the clients that we work with.
Dina, can you talk a little bit about building out a professional network and the personal brand? Maybe you can elaborate on that because you probably know more what that means than myself.
Yeah, that's something that is really huge for veterans to do as they're getting ready to transition. I like to tell candidates that I speak with that you have to get out from behind your desk, right? So we live in this world where we do so much over the computer and our cell phones, but the best relationships to me are the ones that are made face-to-face when it's possible. Now, we're huge advocates for professional platforms like LinkedIn and making those connections, but attending events, job fairs, professional networking groups, meetups, it's just so much nicer when you can shake somebody's hand or physically hand them your resume. So when we're talking to veterans, I mean, there's a ton of ways you can go about building your network and your brand. I like to use 3 key points. So I share with my candidates, first and foremost, you have to be intentional when you connect with somebody. So connecting with people that you have things in common with professionally, or people that can both add value to the relationship, that's super important. And then secondly, when you're connecting with somebody, make sure you keep in touch. You have to foster that relationship, because people like to say, oh, I have 10,000 people that I'm connected with on LinkedIn. But if you don't have conversations with those people, what does the connection really mean? And then lastly, you need to be yourself, right? Be authentic. I learned this phrase from my husband a long time ago, but people don't want to meet your representative. I don't want to meet who you think I want you to be. Your brand is who you are. It's
Right.
what you represent in your career, in your life. And building that network takes time. And that's why we tell veterans, like, be prepared, be invested, be focused. Because when you start building your network long before you need it, the chances are that people are going to be there to help you when you actually do need them, because you've already taken the time, you've invested, and you've done the work.
Dina, when you were talking about building out your network and your genuine brand there, I remember in the early days with Fusion Cell, when Tony Negron, one of the founders, he and I would talk with Navy SEALs or people that were just getting out of some of the special operations communities, very impressive military stories. But we found, and they found, if you go into a big corporation and you're looking to get a big job, you need to translate those skills. Just saying you were a Navy SEAL or an Air Force pilot or a logistics expert on a big base, the civilian person can kind of visualize from movies or books what that may be, but they don't really know what talents that military person has. For example, team leadership, unselfishness, dedication, hard work, mental toughness, physical toughness. So talk about interview tips for recent military folks. And sometimes they're not comfortable, but they have to sell themselves to a civilian leader or an employer because that civilian person may not know what talents they possess. Is that fair?
Oh, 100%, Jack. The biggest thing, whether it's your first interview or your 10th, you have to be prepared, right? The military teaches us that preparation is key, and that goes hand in hand when you're getting ready to interview. And if you've spent 10, 20 years in the military, it's probably your first interview, because most of us joined at 18, 20 years old. So you have to prepare, and you have to make sure that you're ready when you walk in that door or you get on that Zoom call. And so first and foremost, you need to research the company and understand their mission, what their values are, what the culture is like. Because 9 times out of 10, when you're interviewing, a company is going to ask you, why do you want to work here? That's really a good opportunity to let them know how their mission aligns with what your career goals and expectations are. Secondly, you want to make sure that you practice your elevator pitch, right? Because if it's your first interview, you're probably not going to be confident. We all have nerves. We all go through the thought of, I need to do my best. What if this doesn't work out? But practice speaking confidently about yourself. I know I stood in front of the mirror and talked to myself and did my elevator pitch probably 100 times before my first interview, because you want to go in there and you want to impress. And you brought up the military jargon and really translating your skills. And that's being able to speak to your professional experiences and skill sets and how they actually fit into what the requirements of the job are. We like to say demilitarize it, if you will, because corporations don't understand military jargon. We use a lot of acronyms. We use the word battalion and commander, and it's language they don't understand. So you have to think, hey, I'm going into this corporation and I'm trying to get this job. I have to speak in a way that is easy for them to understand. And ask good questions. Again, that goes back to that preparation, but successful interviews should be a conversation. It shouldn't be one-sided. It shouldn't be the interviewer asking you all of the questions. You want to have questions prepared beforehand and really show that you're invested in the interview and make it more of a conversation. And lastly, again, kind of goes back to building that brand and that network. You want to be professional, you want to be confident, and most importantly, you have to be yourself.
Dina, before we let you go, what about some recent success stories that you've seen or had, Dina, with veterans and the civilian or the corporate business side?
Yeah, so I was recruiting for a role, and I had a good number of qualified candidates for that role that had already been sent to the client. Some were through, different parts of the interview phase. And I was actually getting ready to take the job posting down off LinkedIn or close the job out, if you will. And as I was doing so, I got a message in my inbox. And I really, I try hard. We get a lot of messages as recruiters, and I really try hard to respond to everybody and read through everything if time allows. And it was somebody that was interested for that particular role. And the way the message came across, Jack, it was so professional. The way she described her skill sets, they were completely aligned of what the client was looking for, what we were looking for in a candidate. And I just knew I had to have a conversation with her. And so after that call, I can't tell you how impressed I was with her, like her professionalism, her background. I said to myself, I have to get her in front of the client. Whether there's 10 candidates up there already, I know I have to present her. And long story short, they loved her, right? She received an attractive offer. She started working for the client. She loves her job. It was her first job after a 20-year career in the Army. And the successful part is that, but we built an awesome relationship. Mm-hmm. We still keep in touch. I mean, sometimes we'll schedule weekend calls just to catch up and chat about work and families.
That's awesome.
and just life in general. And honestly, it's the best part of this job is being able to make those connections with some amazing professionals, being able to advocate for them and share their veteran story and being able to connect them with some awesome jobs. And really, it's the relationships that go well beyond just doing your job. And to me, Jack, honestly, that's really the true definition of success as a recruiter.
Awesome stuff, Dina Anderson. Continued great success serving now with Fusion Cell, helping to bridge that gap between our military talent and the civilian workplace. The Military Effect, featuring the great cellmates and winning formula stories of Fusion Cell. Until next time on The Military Effect, I'm Jack Heath. Thanks, Dina. We'll see you then.
Thanks, Jack.